The well-known famous bounty hunter Samus Aran has been at it for a while now. She has been through many games and many different missions, especially the Metroid Prime series. The Metroid Prime series is one of the most beloved Nintendo properties of all time, arguably. Nintendo knows how to handle Metroid, and we've seen it time and time again, except for this game. But I love Other M, don't get me wrong. Other M is one of my favorite Metroid games just because I love the cinematic feel, I love how it works. But I am going to talk about Metroid Prime 4 today. Obviously, we're talking about this game because it is the next upcoming game in the Metroid Prime series, and Nintendo teased it at last year's trailer. I mean, just take a look.
Tell me it's Metroid Prime 4! Oh my god! I saw the S! Don't do this!
So obviously the big question here is, what is Metroid Prime 4 going to be centered around? Is it going to be once again around Dark Samus or Metroid Prime? Or is it going to follow this new character or returning character that we've seen time and time again, being Sylux? And this is what we're going to kind of look at today, and I'm going to kind of give you the brief overview as to what I want to see Metroid Prime 4 do differently this time, but also keep in the same boundaries from 1, 2, and 3. But in order to do that, let me kind of quick recap for you real quick. The story starts off with Samus getting a distress signal from the space pirate frigate Orpheon, and the crew has been slaughtered by space pirates and they're left laying around everywhere. So Samus investigates and finds out that Ridley is involved in this as well, and they have a tussle. The space pirate frigate blows up, and Ridley flies down to Tallon for a new planet in the series. Samus then chases after Ridley, and then the adventure begins. Samus then finds all of the Chozo artifacts and defeats Ridley at the very end of the game, or Meta Ridley. But something very big was happening in the background through this whole thing, not just Ridley. What seemed to happen was a meteor hit Tallon 4 a way back, and it had some type of toxic waste. That toxic waste being Phazon. It then corrupted the core of the planet, which started to mutate the animals around. And one of the things that ended up mutating was a pure Metroid. The Metroid started off as a baby hatchling and started to consume the Phazon, and then it grew and grew and grew into what we know as Metroid Prime. Samus then defeats Metroid Prime, but then tries to escape. On her escape, Metroid Prime reaches out and grabs her suit right from her while Samus escapes safely. But what she doesn't realize is Metroid Prime now has developed the ability to clone her and to pretty much have her same suit and pretty much same abilities. So this is where Dark Samus is born. The rest of the games in the series is pretty much the same thing. I'm not trying to go too in-depth with these, but Samus is overall trying to defeat Dark Samus or Metroid Prime. And in Metroid Prime 2 Echoes, she has to travel between light and dark ether to defeat Metroid Prime, but he once again lives after defeated, seemingly. And in Metroid Prime 3, it's the same go-around, where Samus eventually, finally at the end, defeats Metroid Prime for good. Well, at least it seems that way. We also get a special ending at the end of Metroid Prime 3, and this is what I want to kind of discuss in detail, and this is what's going to lead into Metroid Prime 4. So let's start off with Metroid Prime 4's story. We've been told by the creators of Metroid Prime that Dark Samus may not be returning anymore, and that would be kind of a bummer because the game is really revolved around Metroid Prime. I mean, the game is literally called Metroid Prime. So to not have Dark Samus is going to be kind of a bummer. And I think that it was one of the greatest antagonists in Nintendo's history because it developed as this small little creature that eventually turned into this massive threat. Personally, I think Dark Samus is going to return. I read a rumor online talking about how there could be a co-op gameplay with Samus and Dark Samus against a common enemy. And that sounded interesting to me because we actually do get a glimpse as to what that common enemy is by seeing the end of Metroid Prime 3 being Sylux's ship pulling up on Samus. So this could really mean that maybe it's going to require Samus and Dark Samus to fight against Sylux, or maybe Samus and Sylux to fight against Dark Samus. And this is kind of where I'm thinking. Now, Sylux still remains a mystery, and I think that's where Metroid Prime 4 is going to take place, is the origin story and kind of the development story of Sylux. Who is he? Well, he first appeared in Metroid Prime Hunters as a simple bounty hunter, and not much is known about him but his extreme hate for the Galactic Federation. Now, let's stop and think about that for a second. Why does he hate the Galactic Federation so much? It's never really discussed. He can't even speak, really. He never says a word, he never says anything to Samus, but just fights her and then leaves in his spaceship. So what is his main purpose? What is his goal into this entire thing? And I think I might have a clue. What if he was related to Samus? I know, I understand, hear me out. There is a theory online saying that it could be Samus's long-lost brother, Solomon Aran. Now this was actually brought up in a Metroid comic called The Blood of the Chozo, and what it talks about is the attack of the space pirates on Samus's homeland. And it says that when Samus was 6 years old, when her parents died by the hands of Ridley, her little brother, which was 2 years younger than her, was right there by her side. After the space pirates and Ridley attacked and everything was destroyed, her brother was lost forever and never mentioned again. Now, this could really tie into a story and something really deep. Why would Solomon hate the Galactic Federation? Here's why. When the invasion happened and Samus's parents were dead, Samus had nowhere to go. She was alone and scared and just a 6-year-old little girl that had nothing left. The people to save her were actually some alien creatures known as the Chozo. They raised her as their own and created her as this fierce, strong, independent woman that is this crazily great, awesome bounty hunter she is today. With this amazing suit and weaponry, she became her own thing and bounty hunted on her own. She then helped the Galactic Federation out from time to time with their problems, and she kind of made good ties with them. But here's the question. Why did the Chozo not help Solomon? Well, the comics suggest that he died off. It suggests that everybody on the planet died off, in fact, that Samus made it out alive thanks to the Chozo. After the death of her parents, Solomon was just expected to be dead. I assume that they looked for him, and I assume they looked for him a lot, but I guess he was nowhere to be found. Perhaps he was unconscious or knocked out somewhere underneath the rubble, and eventually woke up wondering where the heck did his family and everybody he loved go. Growing up on his destroyed homeland, upset, angry, just enraged that no one helped him out, he grows up just with pure hatred towards everyone, even his own sister. He becomes his own bounty hunter and his own special thing for just himself, and he's only out to help himself and himself only. And that's why he becomes Sylux. And it kind of makes sense with the name, Solomon and Sylux, and it kind of represents kind of like Samus, you know what I mean? So it all ties in together. And maybe he just hates the Galactic Federation because they work with Samus, and he hates his sister for not coming back and looking for him, and he feels like he's been neglected, he's been left alone, and this could be kind of a family story that we see unfold right in front of us, and this could be something really interesting. Okay, so his goal is to wipe out everyone, including the Galactic Federation, his older sister Samus, and probably even take out Ridley after killing his parents. But the question is, what is he doing at the end of Metroid Prime Federation Force? We see him walk into the Galactic Federation, he breaks in, and he gets into one of the vaulted doors. And he's able to retrieve a Metroid, and one of the last Metroids that the Galactic Federation was able to pick up. He then opens the container and unit, and then eventually steals the Metroid. So what's the purpose of him taking that lone Metroid out? Well, maybe he notices something in Samus's past that was hard for her to get by, and he needs some help. So what has been Samus's biggest threat besides Ridley? Metroid Prime. What if he is trying to recreate Metroid Prime or revive him in a new state to help team up with Sylux in order to defeat Samus once and for all? And perhaps this time Metroid Prime goes rogue and even tries to kill Sylux, and then that pits Samus and Sylux on the same team against Metroid Prime. Kinda wacky, huh? Alright, enough about the story, and let's move on to the actual gameplay here, because it's not going to change much, as Metroid Prime 1, 2, and 3 absolutely killed it with the way it looked, and it is still going to stay in first person most likely. So with that in mind, the only thing we could really, I think, expect is some really good crisp graphics now in HD. Have the inside of Samus's helmet look very realistic, have water droplets hit her helmet, hit the visor, have the fog hit the visor, you know, and have like all the extra visor settings and stuff tied to the helmet so you can see, you know, where you're at on the map through her helmet on the side and stuff like that. Make it feel like you're really Samus in that suit. One thing that I think needs a drastic change is the way that Samus moves in the Prime game. She moves really bulky, really slow, and it doesn't feel right. If the camera was to actually pan out, the way Samus moves would look so unappealing, it's not even funny. That's why Other M caught my eye, because the way Samus moves in that game is so fluid, so motion-like, and it feels really athletic, like you're playing as a really athletic character. And I need that to be in first person. I know it's kind of hard to replicate that in first person, but let Samus have different moves and agile attacks. Let her be able to roll. Let her be able to like crouch or spring to the left, spring to the right, do a flip backwards or something. This can all be done still in first person, but it would make Samus feel quicker, more agile, and more light on her feet. And it would help the series progress towards a better way. Another thing Other M did well is that they had small little cinematic movements within each enemy and boss fight. Every now and then you would trigger this cool animation where Samus would do this cool unique move, but the only thing I think they needed to add was a quick time event to make you actually attack. They could do this in Metroid Prime. In the first person, they could zoom out in third person for a second, showing this cool cinematic scene, and then back into first person as you trigger an attack on the enemy. This would be really cool to show what Samus looks like outside of her suit, and then to put you right back in the suit in quick fluid action. This flows into my next idea from Metroid Samus Returns, where Samus gets a new attack called the melee counter. She is able to thrust her cannon and kind of knock back enemies, which sets up this cool cinematic scene, and then you trigger the missiles or the shots that you need to shoot into the enemy. This is kind of what I want in the first person point of view, where maybe you can swing the remote or the Joy-Con, and this counters as a trigger. You don't have to have a special button tied to this or anything. You just swing the Joy-Con, and this would, you know, count as the trigger. And once you counter the attack, this would set up a kind of cinematic cutscene where Samus does all these flips and tricks onto the enemy, and then you would have to hit quick time events to actually damage the enemy. Also, just to throw it out there, I want her whole array of attacks. I want her grappling hook, I want her supercharged run and her jump, and even that little jetpack that she uses sometimes for extra jump and leverage on her back. I want all of it. Throw it all in here, combine all the games' weapons, and give Samus this just really super powered arsenal to help her on her journey. I think also something that would really work really well is to have lots of other ray switches like you did in Metroid Prime 1, where you had the plasma gun and just all those different things, the fire ray, you know, have the ice beam and, you know, the wave beam, all those different type of beams, and let them be selectable again. That added more flavor and more variance to the game. Now, Metroid is already kind of considered an open world game, but it is still very linear, making you only go to certain parts if you have certain weapons. But that can still be the case in Metroid Prime 4, but in a different way. Let's expand the universe in Metroid Prime 4. Let's make it almost open world sandbox-like, kind of like Breath of the Wild and Mario Odyssey. Now, I know lots of you guys don't really maybe not want that type of open world, and I'm not talking anything greatly huge like the size of an actual planet, but make there terrain that you can turf anytime you want. Simply just like the 2D Metroids, where you can go left or right. Let that kind of be the thing for Metroid Prime, because that's not always the case for the last 3 games. Let you be able to explore all you want at any time you want. Let it be kind of like a big, huge overworld where maybe you can go from different planets and you can explore different planets. Kind of like Mario Odyssey with different kingdoms, you can explore different planets, but not entire planets. Obviously, that would be too big, but big sections of different planets. That would be really cool to see that in a sandbox style and in HD. Also, give Samus' ship more use. Instead of just like in Metroid Prime 3, clicking on little symbols for no reason to tell you what planet to go to, make it actually be useful. Make you be able to click what planet you want to go to, set in the coordinates, and actually fly the ship for some extent. And then maybe show a little cutscene as the ship goes down into a planet, but also allow you to kind of move your ship around the surface of the planet some and land it in certain areas. Obviously, it'd be kind of weird if you could land it anywhere you want. You wouldn't even have to play the game, but let you be able to land it in certain parts of the planet, because obviously you can't fly the ship inside the planet, so you would have to get out of the ship eventually to get deeper inside the planets. So let the ship be more usable, more accessible, let it become a bigger part of the game. It is kind of sad that we didn't get any Metroid Prime 4 footage at E3 this year, or really anything else at all from Metroid Prime 4, and the closest thing we got was a Super Smash Bros. Ridley cutscene movie. Absolutely beautiful scene, but you know what, we're just going to have to wait a little longer until we can see exactly what this game is going to be and how it pans out. But until then, guys, let me know in the comments what you want to see from Metroid Prime 4, and I'll be sure to discuss them later on at a later time. And let me know what you guys really want from this game, because I want to know what you guys are thinking and see if we're matching up on ideas. But thank you guys. Please remember to leave a like and subscribe if you're new, and thanks for tuning in, guys. I'll see you then.